Hi, my name is Jameson, and I live in Leverett, and I go to Leverett Elementary School, and I'm in 6th grade. My name is Skylar.
And I'm Edie Field. I'm an honorary member of the Historical Commission, and I've lived in Leverett since 1970.
My name's Leighton LeClaire from Jackson Hill, born in Morris Corner, married in Morris Corner, and probably be buried in Morris Corner.
I'm Hilda Williams. I live in Morris Corner. That's where my school is.
I'm Noel Kenny.
And I'm Shirley Lashway.
I'm Nathan Eckstein.
I'm Hayden.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Will Stratford, Dick Stratford's son.
I'm Dick Stratford, 84.
I'm Magdalene Marcus, and I am a 6th grader in Leverett Elementary School. I'm Isabel Higgs.
And I'm Chuck Royce, who attended Leverett Elementary Schools back in the early 50s.
Well, I have to tell you, I was an only child, so school meant a lot. That was my family and my fun with school.
When you went to school back then, because of the size of the class and the, the physical description of school, it was almost like a family venture. You came into school and there's cordial greetings and that, and personal interchanges during the day, and like lunch was a social thing because we brought our own food and cooked it on the stove, the best we could. And so it had that family atmosphere to it. But when the teachers got down to teaching, they were teachers. In many ways, yes, in many ways, no. From a standpoint of social skills, community living, personal relations, respect for others, I think that was a great experience. But from the standpoint of educational standpoint, in retrospect now, I'm not sure it prepared me for like going down to Amherst and beyond, especially as far as study habits and that. Our classroom was pretty nondescript. It was just one big barren room with movable desks in it. We had a wood stove in it, and each morning on cold weather, we were responsible for opening the window and throwing wood in and starting the fire to heat the place. We had no running water. The water that we had for our consumption, we had to walk up to the neighbor's house and with a kind of a crock, we filled it with water, and that was our water. And we had no food service at all, so it was just a barren classroom.
It was just one room, just a little desk, and no walls between 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. It was all one room.
One fair-sized room, not as big as this one, I don't believe, as I remember it. We had a chalkboard up front behind the teacher's desk. She had her desk right up in front of the classes. The teacher's desk was in front of the room, and then each class was lined up in order of the class, like maybe 1st grade was like maybe in one row or one section, and then 2nd maybe in the other, and 3rd, and then 4th.
No different than an ordinary room, and they would have, well, you ever come up to my house, you'd see the boards are up about 4 feet. Yeah, 4 feet. There'd be boards around the school room.
They had the blackboards, 3 or 4 blackboards around the front.
And then well, I don't know if they did anything, but up to Morse Corner Schoolhouse, they used to put they made them just straight boards, and they make the little kids sit down in front, and you can see the outline of the next one right behind it, and the next one. It's still on the wall. It's quite interesting. But do you ever think of having 8 classes in one room? Both of us did. Well, that was about it. And then we had the desks, just one room. We always seemed to have enough room, and it was a lot smaller than this.
So you have a nice sink and bathroom? Well, I know what we had for water? A jug. and know where we got it, or if they could find a well to get water out of. And we had, water to wash in, just had that for water.
But sometimes the water, we had to go up to somebody's house and get it. And sometimes some of us, well, bad boys, would not make it to the house. We'd dip it out of the little brook and drink brook water.
There was a board you sit on, like this table, and there was a hole about as big as this, and that's your bathroom. You sit on the hole, and there was no wall between it. It was just a wall around the outside, so
Wow.
the boys couldn't peek through the wall and see the girls in there, or vice versa. So now you don't have to go outside, even in the winter. You just go down the hall to the nice, warm, flush toilets. So that was a very significant difference in my life.
When we wanted to go to the bathroom, we had to raise our hands, and one finger meant you wanted to urinate, two meant you wanted to move your bowels, and we had to walk out in the cold. There were two little buildings, and the girls one, the boys one, and so the teacher could tell which hand you had raised, how long you should be out there. She'd probably send one of the 8th grade girls out to the girls to see why they were not coming back, and a boy for the boys. And quite often, she would find them playing in the brook.
My desk often had my dog. I'd walk to school a mile, my dog would lay right there on the floor by my desk until recess time, or then time to go home, and the dog would follow me back to the farm.
Well, for one thing, we were 4 grades in one room, and maybe there was 5 kids in my class. A lot of us walked to school, even in bad weather. Not many were bused at that time, and if they were like bused in like a station wagon or a van, that type of a vehicle. You know, full, but we had space, but there was room up in front of the teacher's desk.
I can't think that it was, honey, that it was cramped, no.
Yeah, it was cramped. Oh, it was 4 grades.
Less than 10, maybe 10 in my class.
Well, I was just looking at our commencement program from when I graduated from the school here, and I had 11 in my graduating class.
Maybe there might have been 20, 25, maybe. Somewhere around there.
Well, in the East Leverett School, there was 3 grades per classroom. There was 4th, 5th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then 6th, 7th, 8th. And then when we came over here, there were 2 classes, or 2 grades per classroom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with 1 teacher. 1 teacher, no teaching assistants. The teacher handles everything.
I think she must have given each class an assignment to do and then go on to the next. I don't remember her doing that, but it would seem that would be the logical way to do it. I'm sure she must have done it something like that, but she couldn't just skip, hop, and jump around. You know, each class had to have something to do.
Classmates differed from really pretty girls to guys who were just old hillbillies. They were nice kids, just like all your classmates. You love them all dearly. And you think of them the rest of your life, how they're doing, where they are, you know.
When we got to school in the morning, we did the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. The teacher read from the Bible, and we sang a song, America or Star Spangled, I'm not sure what song, something like that, I think.
7:30 in the morning. I don't remember what time we got out. It was afternoon.
You know, I was thinking about that this morning when the school bus went by. I think we started around 8 o'clock or so. I think we went to almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
When I was in first, second, third, and fourth, her name was Mrs. Watson, and she lived just down the road from where I live now. And then when I was in fifth through eighth grade, her name was Mrs. Briggs.
Mrs. Briggs lived over here by the lake. When I got down here, she was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th, I think. Of course, my Aunt Lois Dunbar.
My aunt was teacher in that class, Lois Dunbar. I think they were fair, and they did discipline you if you were out of sorts. And we had different teachers come in too. We had like a music teacher. She would come, I don't know if she came once a week maybe, or once a month. And then we had a penmanship teacher, a writing teacher. That would come periodically. I'm not just sure how, but we always look forward to that. So the teacher didn't have to teach everything.
When the teacher was there, she would have the first grade, and we did not talk or walk around because she wanted the first grade kids to hear what she was trying to teach them. And then when she got done the lesson in the first grade, she would assign them something like coloring or, or something, and go to the second and give them their lessons. So no one walked around and no one talked. To their kids, you be quiet. And if you weren't quiet, like the older boys sometimes weren't, started fooling around, you know what, one of the teachers was Mrs. Baxter. She had them come up front, hold their hands out, and she had a rubber hose, and she hit them with that.
Mrs. Watson, Mr. Watson, Perry, Roberts.
Larson.
I had a lot of teachers. Every year we'd have a different teacher for near.
One of the teachers we had, if the kids got acting up, he would take a piece of chalk and it would go sailing through the room, and whoever it hit him.
He'd sit on the desk in front of me, and he'd have chalk in his hand, and he would get so mad he'd throw that chalk right across the room.
Mr. Larson.
That was a fella, he only had one arm. He was paralyzed in the other, and he was pretty good with his left hand. I don't think I ever got thrown that.
Mrs. Watson was our teacher. She was my first teacher. And she had a son, and she never let him have sweets. So he put his hand up to go to the bathroom. And instead he would go out in the hall where our lunches were, and he'd go through them to take the sweet. Then once a week, our music teacher would come, and she would teach us songs, Mrs. Mason. Then she got married, and her name was Mrs. Cook. Then we used to have a nurse that used to come once a month, I think it was. Her name was Miss Poole. We used to have a penmanship teacher come, and a doctor. We used to have a doctor come once a year, and he would check our lungs and heart and all that stuff. Yeah, there was a dentist that came to about once a year, I think. And they used to have us kids all line up. And I told them that my mother said I didn't have to have mine done. But she didn't say it, so they knew I was scared, so they made me be the first one.
Mrs. Field, she taught for many years there. She was a very tall lady, and I'll never forget, because of course we had to carry our lunch, and she'd always have a thermos bottle for her coffee.
Mrs. Avery and Mrs. Deedy, and then over here in this school I had Mrs. Briggs, or Miss Briggs, Mrs. Briggs, I think it was, and she had lost her husband. And Mr. Brinkman and Mr. Chafella, yeah, generally they were nice. A couple of them could be kind of sarcastic at times, but it all depends upon, how you conducted yourself.
Cold in the winter? No, not without wood stove. Well, I don't remember ever being cold, unless it was on, see, I had to walk to school when I was in the lower grades. When I got to be in 5th through 8th, we had a van, well, I call it a van, it was just like a station wagon then, that took us to school. And the driver lived right next door to us.
We had a wood stove in the middle of the room. We'd have to bring the wood in from the woodshed out, connected to the building, and pile it around the stove, and somebody, probably the teacher, would control how hot it was and throw a stick of wood in.
Most of the time, it would keep pretty warm. I remember once a chimney wouldn't draw or something, and there wasn't any heat in the school at all, hardly.
If it was cold, we put our coats on in that, or we moved closer to the wood stove.
We had our own fun because we didn't have a playground, we didn't have all that.
We had a recess, 15 to 20 minutes, about 10:30 or so.
I think 15 minutes,
I think if we had 3 recesses, that would be all we'd have.
morning and afternoon.
It was very informal. Now, over in East Leverett, I think we had about a 15-minute recess in the morning and a 15-minute recess in the afternoon. And sometimes, I think, based on how we were conducting ourselves as students, teachers may expand it, keep us out as long as they could, so we wouldn't be bothering. But over in East Leverett, stone wall, and we had about a 15-20-minute recess, and we'd all pile out of the school and go over that stone wall and go across the road and go down into a field, which is no longer a field, it's all grown timber now, and that was our baseball field. Dodgeball, we played baseball, softball, some. Soccer was not really a sport of interest back then.
Played baseball and stuff like that in the recess time. On the hill, right beside the hill, going up around to the church.
We played games, tag, maybe hide and seek. And I remember when I went up to Morse Corner, up by the co-op, one thing that stands out in my mind is dodgeball. Well, we played that right in the middle of the road. When we were playing dodgeball at recess, the ball went down across a little Dudleyville Road, and a man owned cattle there, or a cow or something, and it was a big pile of you-know-what. And the ball went there, and one of the kids got it out, but when it did, they got it, and it went right into the brook, because the brook was down just beyond that. So instead of trying to get the ball out of the brook, we just took sticks and kept pushing it further down the brook. So consequently, it got way down, back through the field and down almost to the falls. You know where the falls are?
Yep.
Where Elliot lives?
Yep.
Down there? Well, he didn't go over the falls, we got it before that, but then we brought it back. I don't know how many of us there were. There was, I don't know, a few of us. But anyhow, we brought it back, but we didn't go to school. It must have been afternoon recess, I'm thinking this, because we hid out in the cemetery, that's from where I live now. And then, it's funny now. But we must have eventually gone back to school, because I know the next day, maybe the teacher was gone when we returned the ball, I don't know. But the next day we came to school, of course, and for punishment we had to write X amount of papers. I don't know what we were supposed to write about, but I can remember I just took a book and began copying the same page over and over and over and over again, because we knew the teacher never read it. I know we used to like to go up on the hill in the pines there toward the church and have lunch, and I can remember if we got up there too far where Mrs. Briggs couldn't see us out the window, she would take her ruler and bang, 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 bang on the window. And we played softball out in the back. It was a hill and the rocks, but we still played softball. The batter and the catcher would always stand with their back to the school, of course, because when the batter hit the ball, we didn't want it, you know, couldn't go toward the school.
windows, right.
Breaking X number of windows, yeah.
Recess was fun. That was the best time of the school day. It was like, you kick the ball around or run around and get exercise. I don't remember any games. Used to play all around the church in North Leverett. And then you come down here, right over there by that little hut out there underneath the trees, there was a lot of little rocks. And I remember going out there, about your age, and digging tunnels in these little rocks. I don't know whether they came up from the back and down in there. Oh yeah, we had jungle gym and merry-go-round. We used to see how fast we can go and hang out over the edge.
Well, count the lunch one 3 times. You had a morning, lunch, and an afternoon. And I don't remember how long they were. I think the noon one must have been an hour, because we had time to eat and play ball, or whatever else we were doing. I remember most of the kids, a lot of the kids had the metal lunch pails. You could fit a small thermos in it with a drink, sandwich, maybe a couple cookies, banana. One thing at Morse Corner though is at lunchtime, this one girl, she was in the 8th grade, I must have been in the 7th, lived up Dudleyville, and she would invite me to go home for lunch with her. And that was always fun.
My mom packed lunch. I was kind of spoiled, peanut butter and jelly or things like that.
Whatever you happened to bring home from school, you know, when you came to school. We lived close enough so we could run home and back during lunch hour. It was.
When we were in East Leverett, we ate what we brought. And I said sometimes in the colder weather, we'd bring in potatoes and bake them on the wood stove. We'd bring in hot dogs and cook them ourselves on the wood stove. Then bring in hamburgers, those were too difficult to cook. Or bring in soup and set it on the wood stove and heat it up, or we'd have probably peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
We had report cards. They were A, B's, and like that.
Just the way you do today, probably 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 0. Sometimes you had a paper, you get a nice star.
From 12 to 1. I guess math, history, and of course math, and everything multiplying and dividing and subtracting, and with a report card.
We had music. I noticed on my report card we had art, but I can't remember having any formal art classes.
Well, I mean, you were quiet in your classroom. I mean, all grades, I mean, you were quiet. If you wanted to speak, you would raise your hand. And we had outdoor plumbing, so if you had to go to the bathroom, you had to raise your hand, and only one out at a time. We had a little outhouse.
Behave yourself. Maybe, I think, basic rules are, don't do anything to distract from what the teacher is trying to do. Don't show disrespect for your students or your fellow students, although there was a lot of that. I couldn't run in the hall. We had to, like I was looking down the hall when I came in today, and the stairway's there. When we went downstairs, we were in line. When we came upstairs, when we were in line, when we went from our classroom to lunch, we were in a line and that. And the only time we weren't in a line is when we were in the gymnasium or we were out on a playground. Other than that, it was a very orderly thing.
One boy got out of hand, I don't know what he did, but she called him up front to her desk, and I can remember he held his hand, she had him, and she slapped it with a ruler. They did some things like that. They didn't injure the kids, but I mean, basically she'd have you stay after school or sit up by her desk, depending on what happened, I guess, or what she felt like doing. And if you stayed after school, I don't really know how you got home. I guess you might have walked.
She made me stand in a corner when I didn't do things just her way. Or, more punishment, we had to sharpen all the pencils. So that wasn't too bad. You get used to making them nice and sharp on the ends. Punishment was more like verbal lashing, or go sit in the corner, or you can't do that anymore.
No whispering, you get a piece of chalk thrown at you. Make it up. Go stay in recess.
I don't think I was ever late for school, but I don't think it would be a punishment because it would depend on your situation now, you know, where you were. Some kids had a father to walk to school, or maybe they had to take care of brothers and sisters or for a while. You know, things were very different. So that would be the only, I don't think we'd have to be punished.
Make you go up and write it on the board in front of everybody. She'd send a note home to the parents.
Punishment?
Yeah.
Well, like I mentioned, you know, being confined to the paper closet, but once in a while, one teacher in particular would rap you, you know, very gently. Never broke a ruler. We had one principal over here, allegedly was a former wrestler, and we had a kid in class who still lives in Leverett and has done very well for himself in the business world. Could be disruptive. Not destructively so, but, you know, just you know, destroy what was going on in the classroom with his conduct and that. So this Mr. Brinkman used to pick him up and had a waste paper basket that was taller than that over there, and pick him up and set him in the waste paper, and he had to stand there until he was going to behave. Still see him, you know, in a waste paper basket with his hands gripping the edge, looking over the edge. He's done very well for himself, though. Probably has more money than I do. The type of disciplinary problems we had back then were, you know, maybe talking when you shouldn't be talking, poking someone when you shouldn't be poking, and that, passing notes. When the teacher turned her back or his back, we were always passing notes, spitballs. And East Leverett School, we had the ink wells. You know, you talk about putting girls' hair in the ink well, innocent things like that, or snowballing, or things like that.
It was, but it wasn't. We didn't have any black people in town. In no schools. They were all white. Probably not that way today.
We only have a couple in our school.
And Leverett was pretty much a white neighborhood. So we didn't even hear that one. We didn't even know what the word meant, segregation, back in the 50s.
No, we had one family of colored people and they made them get out of town. Would you believe it? 70 years ago? We had one down on 63,
Never mind.
down White to Lakers. They made him get out of town. I went to work. I worked with him for years. Nice fella.
Segregated as far as races and that. We didn't have any when I was in school. We didn't have anybody other than Caucasians in our school. Stuart Olson, who owns East Leverett School now, has pictures of the East Leverett School back in the 1850s and 60s, where half the students were Afro-American. Back in the 1850s, 60s, Afro-Americans, but because of the underground railroad network, you know, it wasn't an issue back then because there was a lot of mutual respect back then.
No, I wasn't on the receiving end. I was more on the giving end. I was taught not to bully people, but
No, we didn't. I never heard of the word bully.
We all were same, you know.
No, honey, I can never ever remember that. No, we were always good friends, and I can never ever be bullied and I was an only child, in which it could, you know, when you are alone, I can never remember not being happy, or the kids I can never remember anything like that, no?
We had kids who were well-behaved, we had kids who weren't well-behaved, but again, you know, thinking back, and I still have very fond memories of many of my classmates, and I still try to keep in touch with them, and generally it was, you know, a nice group of young people. We had our problems. One thing I was thinking about that I didn't realize last time I was here, that you know, one of the things you read about now is bullying in school. We had that back then, but we didn't, it wasn't labeled as someone bullying someone else. But we had it back then, and I can recall now in retrospect, and I wasn't one that bullied other people. I was brought up with respect for other people, but we had some people in our school, even when we came over here to the consolidated school, that were really, you know, other kids gave them a hard time.
And then I remember when Halloween, we walked from North Leverett to Moore's Corner just to write on all the school windows.
With soap.
Stopped trick-or-treating on the way up, so it made it worthwhile. Yeah, we did. And guess what? The next day when we came to school, the teacher made us take it all off. But it was on school time. I don't remember staying after to do it. We had to go out and clean the windows.
How did you know it was you?
Everybody did it. If it wasn't you, tough.
It was soap, right? You wrote with soap?
In North Leverett, this is a naughty one. At the end of the school year, Mrs. Watson would buy a big tub of ice cream, and there's a brook right there in North Leverett, right near the school. If you know where the school sits, it belongs to the Baptist church now, but there's that brook there. She would set the ice cream in that brook, in between the rocks to keep it cold from melting. And at the end of that day, the last day of school, we would all get an ice cream cone. Well, at that recess, that afternoon recess, we knew the ice cream was there, and some friends of mine dared me to stick my finger in it. And I did. But guess what? I think I'm embarrassed to this day because she made me wait till last to get my ice cream cone, but I did get one.
Oh.
But I thought,
How did she know it was you?
thing to do.
How did she know it was you? Somebody
It
told.
probably was easy to figure it out. I don't know. But she
You were
knew
the
it was
only one
me.
licking your finger.
I don't know. I won't go there. I don't know. 93.
I used to sit next to a classmate who had done all this homework because he wasn't as busy as I was at night. What you got for an answer there, Walter? And he wrote it down, and I passed mine in, and we'd both be right.
They're not gonna see no different. We never, went to Amherst or knew, that was a big town for us. And Amherst kids used to call us, country
hillbillies?
Yeah, hillbillies. We never knew what snow day was.
No, we didn't.
Because so many kids walked to school. School was always open.
We didn't even, never heard of a school day, a snow day. We went regardless.
The art teacher came about once a month.
Yeah, big one. All outdoors.
I don't know, we were pretty courageous. We usually wanted to get to school.
Then you had a lot of snow here.
I started in April 1949 when my family moved from Fulton, New York. And we started out in the old East Leverett School, which is still there, owned by Stuart Olson. And I went 4th and 5th grade over there. And then when they built this new school, we all moved over here in 51. And I went here 6th, 7th, and 8th grade before going to Amherst. When I went to grammar school in Leverett, it was, compared to what it is, it was a very simple life. I mean, you kids are more involved with technology than we were. Your curriculum is different. I think the atmosphere is different. Almost going to Leverett Elementary School back then, it was almost like a social venture rather than an educational venture. And so there's a lot of difference. The world is different, I mean.